Hey, if we haven't met, my name's Josh. I am Just Love's CEO, and it is a real delight to kick off our Easter training with a session on vision and values. Now, I have been at 12 of these Just Love Easter trainings. I was there as a student at our first ever training, and I've been to now, I think, 10 or 11 of them as a member of staff since then. They have been a joy. That first Easter training that I went to as a student was some of the most formative days of my life. It has shaped massively who I've become and what I've done in the decade since. And I am genuinely hoping and praying for each of you watching this that the same will be true for you. Our vision and values in Just Love are what define us. They hold us together. It's what we're moving towards. And we're going to start here. I'm going to walk you through the why, the what, and the how of Just Love. We'll start with the why. Before I share the why of Just Love, I think it's worth just taking a moment to think about why you're here. What is your why? Why have you chosen to give up 3 days to either come to training or to catch up and watch these videos afterwards? What are the deep motives that have led you to this point? Take a moment. Maybe just write that down. Okay. Once you've written that down, I'm sure there's going to be a whole variety of whys across those who are part of our student work in this year ahead. Those really matter. It's really good to hold on to those, to look back at that, to keep that central to what motivates you as you go forwards. But let's talk about the why that we unite around in Just Love. Now, you might have noticed that our world is probably not going particularly well right now. You're coming of age at a moment in history where much is unraveling, where lots of old certainties are crumbling, where creation is in crisis, where forces of authoritarianism and violence and nationalism and xenophobia and polarization are on the rise in many, many parts of our world. But what does it look like for us as followers of Jesus to faithfully follow our rabbi in our time and our cultural moment? There's all sorts of temptations. I think one temptation is that we move in the direction of kind of retreat. We withdraw into a little religious bubble where we kind of insulate ourselves from the big scary world out there and we hide away comfortably until Jesus comes back. I think that's a real risk. I feel that temptation. I think equally there is a risk of assimilation on the other end of the spectrum, where under the maybe under the pretense of being relevant, we try to squash our faith into the mold of whatever ideas or ideologies happen to be popular in the dominant culture. I don't know about you, but I'm just not very compelled by either of those options. If we're heading into an era of growing turbulence in our world, I want to be the sort of disciple who can meaningfully play a role in resisting evil and injustice. I want my life to mean something. I want to be the sort of disciple who can calmly and resolutely fight back, who can stand up to the great challenges we face, who's able to offer a place of safety and belonging to those who are in distress. I want to be the sort of disciple who refuses to grow numb or apathetic to the suffering of other human beings. I want to contend for what is good and beautiful and true. I want to be a beacon of hope in a time of despair. I want to be more kind, more courageous, more patient, more joyful, more contagiously in love with Jesus, and more able to give myself away in love to others when I am 80 than I am right now. And you're presumably watching this video because, at least on some level, you resonate with that. And Just Love was started by a group of very ordinary students who dared to dream about what following Jesus with our whole lives might actually look like. They caught something of God's heart for justice, that zeal for God's redemptive love broke their hearts for the violence and the poverty and the injustice in our world, and it broke their hearts for the UK church, which, with some exceptions, was justice light, diluting the rich, expansive invitation to justice in the Bible to a sort of domesticated, optional extra, a box to be ticked maybe by a yearly sermon or a short-term mission or a well-intended but badly run project. So here's the problem. The world is messy, and likely only to get messier over our lifetimes. Christian students, young adults, are generally not being formed into the sorts of disciples that this cultural moment requires. And if that is the problem, then the solution presumably has to be about forming the sorts of disciples who will be capable of showing up, of meeting the great challenges, social, economic, political, ecological, the great challenges that await us with costly, generous, redemptive love of Jesus. The solution's got to be about forming disciples with the character, the values, the theology, the practices that will allow them to sustain a lifelong pursuit of justice in the way of Jesus. And if that's the solution, the question then is how? How do we form those sorts of disciples? How do you join the dots from the problem to the solution? And our theory in Just Love is that the best way we can do that is to cultivate a network, not just some sort of loose connection of people, but a dense, interconnected network of disciples who commit to the journey of living this out together. James Davison Hunter says, the key actor in history is not individual genius, but rather the network and the new institutions that are created out of those networks. The more dense the network, that is, the more active and interactive that network, the more influential it could be. Now, our vision in Just Love is to see a network of thousands pursuing justice in the way of Jesus, holistically, fruitfully, and sustainably. That's our vision statement. Let me break it down for you a little bit. First of all, this idea of a network of thousands. A network of thousands, this dense network, is how we change the world. Whether it's the Clapham sect at the turn of the 19th century in this country, or perhaps the US civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, dense networks, creative minorities, they are one of the most potent agents of change over and over again through history. We are building that sort of network. Justice in the way of Jesus. This is the white-hot center of all we do. There are many ways that you can pursue justice, many different versions of justice that are on offer. We are staking everything, not on some ideology or theory, but on the way of justice, embodied, taught, lived out in the life, death, and resurrection of our Messiah. And that pursuit of justice, we think, is holistic, fruitful, and sustainably. First of all, holistic. That means that our pursuit of justice is about a posture, not just a gesture. We are orienting our whole lives around this pursuit of justice. It's fruitful. We want to cultivate healthy, meaningful, creative impact in our world, focused on those on the receiving end of injustice. And finally, we want our pursuit of justice to be sustainable. This is about the long haul. All meaningful change requires decades, not years. Many of the fights that we pick might even outlive us. We want to be the sorts of people who are more passionate, more engaged, more devoted, more radical as we age. So pause. Just have a moment. How much of that vision has been your experience of Just Love so far, however long or short that experience has been? Maybe it feels really familiar to you, and you're very used to a Just Love context where you talk about that vision all the time. It's really central. Maybe it actually feels like that's the first time you've really heard the vision unpacked. There's no judgment either way, there's no right or wrong. It's just helpful for you to gauge at this stage, how new is this to you? And if you're watching with anyone else, just pause the video and chat with them. If not, why don't you scribble down some thoughts? So that's our vision. Together in Just Love, we are part of seeing a network of thousands pursuing justice in the way of Jesus, holistically, fruitfully, and sustainably. That's what this is all about. That is the destination we are journeying towards. It animates all that we do. So that is our why. Next, let's talk about how we do it. There are two stages to how we are building this network in Just Love. A stage with students and a stage with our network. First stage, stage one, is about activating students. This is the stage that you are in right now. A university, for so many people, is a time where you set the habits, the values, the relationships that will set the trajectory for the rest of your lives. We want our student groups to function a bit like a greenhouse, providing the conditions for young disciples at this critical stage of their lives to put down deep roots of just discipleship. In our Just Love groups, we want to form the sorts of disciples who are rooted in the biblical story of justice, who are so compelled by that story, so compelled by their faith that they see every encounter, every purchase, every decision about how they spend their time and who they spend their time with as an opportunity to practice Jesus-shaped love. We want to form disciples who are able to engage critically with the complexities of seeking justice, who have embedded the spiritual rhythms that keep them from growing jaded or cynical, who've formed the lifelong friendships that will allow them to call out the best in each other. Now that means that the purpose of a Just Love group is to be a community of practice, contagiously living out the story of God's restorative justice. Why the focus on practice, on action, rather than just thinking differently? Well, because, as Henry Nouwen puts it, we do not think ourselves into new ways of acting, we act ourselves into new ways of thinking. And living differently, thinking differently, both really matter. But we often place the emphasis, in Just Love, we choose to place the emphasis on living differently, on practice, because the thinking tends to follow. Think of it a bit like breathing. We need to cultivate a rhythm of breathing in and breathing out in our groups. So we breathe in with the learning that we do, with community spending time together, but we breathe out as we serve our cities, we fundraise, we campaign, we pray. We want the slight emphasis to be on the breathing out. We need the rhythm of both, but we want to be about practice, about action, about doing justice. Now, one model that we've found helpful over the years to visualize some of that dynamic is what we call the spiral. This is about the journey that we take, or that we aim to go on with students who are part of Just Love. Now, everyone's journey is a bit different, never as simple as this. My suspicion is that we make this journey of growth over and over with all sorts of different justice issues. It's not really linear, but it's helpful, I think, as a tool. So, most Christian students in the UK are probably up in disengagement or maybe in awakening. In practice, those two actually look quite similar. Those in disengagement have maybe they've either never been exposed to justice in the way of Jesus, or they might be actively hostile to it. Those in awakening have been exposed to some level of justice in the way of Jesus. They might even say they care about justice. They might be in a church that talks about justice, but like those in disengagement, they're not actually doing much about it. Not everyone will start here. Awakening, disengagement, they're only really an option for those with privilege, those who've not really experienced the reality of injustice. And many of us won't have that luxury. But this is where I think most Christian students in the UK tend to be: disengagement and awakening. And notice the dynamics between practice and imagination in those two loops. There's an initial move towards action. If you want to build a community of practice and you're not sure where to start really basic. Start by doing something. Go and serve through your local church's justice ministry, through a local charity. Go and raise some money for Tearfund or IJM. Go and make some basic pledges together to stop eating factory farm meat. Those don't need to be world changing. It's just about making some first steps in practice and inviting others in with you. And then as you start, that will take you and bring others with you along to the action stage. And as you get more confident in that action stage, there comes a deepening, because as you start to practice justice, you're inevitably going to run up against challenges. You'll find that loving people well is actually really complicated, because human beings are really complicated. You'll notice all sorts of mixed motives in yourselves, and then you'll start to get, those motives will get brought out into the open in ways that are often quite uncomfortable, and all sorts of big questions will start to emerge. It's only by moving through this deepening stage, though, that you can get towards the bottom of the spiral. It's a stage to be embraced, not retreated from. And that bottom of the spiral is what we call fruitfulness, where our whole lives are shaped around a pursuit of justice in the way of Jesus. That's going to look different for all of us, and it will be an ongoing transformation. It will take the rest of our lives. So that is a very quick overview for a Just Love group. They are communities of practice, contagiously living out the story of God's restorative justice. As your group does that, it will act as a greenhouse. It will form in students the values, character, theology, practices that will shape them to be the sort of disciples capable of seeking justice in the way of Jesus, holistically, fruitfully, sustainably with their whole lives. That's what we see. I have seen in our student groups. That's what you're going to see for those of you doing the apprenticeship as well. In your peer group, in those around you in church, or in with the place that you're volunteering, you're going to see this ripples as you journey down the spiral and invite others to follow, to come with you. And just to share a few encouragements, back in 2017, our Cambridge students ran a campaign to get the University of Cambridge to fund scholarships for refugees. They worked tirelessly for years on that campaign, building a big coalition across many different student groups, societies, faith groups, until finally the university agreed. And there are now 10 refugees on fully funded scholarships at the University of Cambridge, thanks to that campaign. In 2019, the Just Love students in Durham noticed that many of the homeless community that they'd befriended had nowhere safe to sleep when the temperatures got dangerously low in winter. So they worked together to get churches, the police, the council on board, and they launched the Durham Winter Night Shelter, which has gone on to become its own charity and has provided a safe place to sleep for hundreds of guests over the years. In 2022, our group in St Andrews decided that they wanted to fund an entire IJM rescue mission, and they raised over £5,000 to do that. If people trapped in appalling conditions were brought to freedom because of what they did. And before you think, oh, that's all very well for big groups like Durham or St Andrews or whatever, but what about me and my little committee, or me on my apprenticeship? A couple of years back, we had 2 students in Sussex, and they managed to get a motion through the student union for the university to switch to an ethical bank, effectively divesting millions of pounds out of fossil fuels and the arms trade towards social good. And I share that not because you should necessarily try to copy any of those. Copy and pasting doesn't tend to work very well. But just to raise your ambition of what is possible with a small group of disciples, a creative minority, committed together and daring to dream about what loving God and loving our neighbour could look like in our cities. So that's what we're inviting people into. That is the first stage of what we're doing on the ground with students. And if stage 1 is a bit like a greenhouse, then stage 2 is the garden. The purpose of the greenhouse isn't that we stay in the greenhouse forever. The purpose is to get young plants to a point where they are ready to then be planted out into the garden. And the same is true with our student groups. We want them to be places of incubation, activation, where we set you up, we get you going for a holistic, fruitful, sustainable, lifelong pursuit of justice. And the garden is what comes after uni. The garden is stage 2. And there's currently almost 1,000 people in our network. Those are predominantly people who've come through Just Love as students and have graduated saying, yeah, count me in. I want this pursuit of justice in the way of Jesus to shape my whole life. This is the dense network that we're talking about. This is our ecosystem for changing the world. Our network community gathers around 6 justice practices, and they will come up over and over through our training syllabus. I will introduce them now really briefly, but you'll get way more on these as we go. They're not a tick list. They're not a set of rules. They're not a measure of your status as a justice warrior. I would strongly discourage you from using that kind of language anyway. We're not expecting that everyone will be maxing out on all 6 of these practices simultaneously. And we unpack them in more depth on our website and in the Justice Practice course as well, which with each practice, we think there is basically a baseline set of commitments that is attainable for pretty much everyone. And then there is a focus set of commitments, which set a much more ambitious bar for what could be possible if we devote a season of our lives to 1, maximum 2 of these practices. That's how we want to approach them. So they are a framework and a focal point. They give us something tangible to aim towards together. Really simply, it's serve humbly, live lightly, give deeply, love widely, change structures, and pray boldly. Those are the 6. These are the practices that we gather around in our network. We'll unpack them loads more. We've got all of that to come. Ultimately, they are the long-term fruit of what Just Love is all about. As we collectively in this dense, diverse, committed network seek justice in the way of Jesus with our whole lives, through this framework of our 6 practices, we're going to see redemptive entrepreneurs founding, building, resourcing ventures that create excellent, dignifying jobs that serve a genuine social good. We're going to see laws and policies that can be written that are genuinely good news for the poor. We're going to see hundreds of children fostered and adopted. We're going to see hundreds of millions of pounds, maybe billions, given away to the most effective charity. We're going to see churches that serve their communities, not with tokenistic charity, but with self-giving love. We're going to see the revitalization of local communities seeded by those who do the faithful, glamorous work of being good neighbors. We're going to see the renewal of systems and institutions that serve the common good. We're going to see the impact on schools, prisons, hospitals, care homes, labs, factories made possible by those who are willing to commit and stay the course and do the hard, thankless work because they have caught a vision of God's coming kingdom and they refuse to believe that things have to be the way they are. That is what this is all about. So we've covered our vision. We've talked about why Just Love exists, and we've covered what we do. And I want to end by introducing you to our values. Now, our values are the way that we do the work of journeying towards our vision. At every level of Just Love, we want our values to shape our actions, our culture, our decision making. We don't want these values to be sort of abstract concepts. We want them to be alive. We want them to be owned and lived out in every area of Just Love. We don't want to always pretend, or we don't pretend that we are always going to live up to these values in the way that we would like to. They are not one of those kind of height bars at a theme park that say you need to be over this height in order to get on the ride. They are aspirational. We're aiming and growing towards them together. We have 5 values. The first one is devotion to Jesus. This is first, it is also most important and most central. All the others flow from it. Fundamentally, we care about justice because we love Jesus. Jesus cares about justice, so we do too. Our whole understanding of justice is formed around the person of Jesus. His life and teaching, death and resurrection set the pattern for our pursuit of justice and the way that we do it as well. We'll explore way more about that in the theology sessions to come. Second value, doing justice well. We want to love people well, and that means that good intentions are not really enough. Too many charities have really good intentions but end up harming people. We care about doing justice well. That means that we want to care deeply about the quality, impact and sustainability of all we do. From little things like replying to messages on time to big things like deciding which charity we fundraise for, we want our events, campaigns, fundraising, volunteering to be excellent, high quality. We care about all of that because all of it is an opportunity to love others. It's about love, not perfectionism. Now, crucially though, we never want our pursuit of justice to become abstract or impersonal. We want to be biased towards action, doing justice well, not just talking, not just thinking about justice well, doing justice well. We're not always going to get it right, but our desire is always to learn, to grow, and to serve others as best we are able. Third value is building deep relationships. In a culture of polarization, where we increasingly only hang out in echo chambers with people who look like us, think like us, we are seeking to build bridges of relationship and collaboration. We are only a small part of what God is doing in the world. And we choose to view others as partners in God's mission, not as threats to our own empire. We treat everyone, without exception, with generosity, dignity and kindness, and we commit to the slow work of earning trust and building with others what would not be possible separately. Fourth value, raising lifelong leaders. We want to form leaders of integrity, courage, compassion and resilience. We keep a long-term perspective because it's in decades to come that the real impact of Just Love is going to be seen. Hence the focus on lifelong leaders. We want to grow young leaders with the character and the skills that they need for a holistic, fruitful, and sustainable pursuit of justice in the way of Jesus. Growing leaders grow leaders at every level of just love. We always want to be thinking about how to identify, empower, and invest in others around us so that they can be better than we ever could. Fifth and final value is embracing truth and humility. In a culture where truth is increasingly contested, we care deeply about what is true, biblical, Christ-like, and at the same time, we want to be humble about our limited capacity to fully grasp all truth this side of new creation. So rather than demonizing anyone who thinks differently from us, we welcome nuance as we engage with the complexities of injustice. We can disagree, but we want to seek out challenge and make space for disagreement and dialogue without it feeling like a threat. We always assume that we have more to learn and to seek understanding before trying to be understood. So those are our values. To repeat, they're not just abstract words that we tick a box on our website. We want to embody these values, to live them out together. And perhaps the best way to put it is that people shouldn't learn our values because we tell them what they are. If we're really doing this right, if we're embodying these values and living them out in the day-to-day, people will know what we value by what they see, not by what they read on our website. This is far better caught than it is taught. We're not going to do it perfectly. That's okay. We do it together. These values are how we do the work of shaping our student groups, our apprenticeships, into communities of practice, incubating the sorts of disciples who together in a dense network will meet the great challenges of the coming decades with the redemptive, merciful, restorative justice of Jesus.